Know that part of the deal was you had to have sex with this guy. I didn't know at first what was going to happen, especially that first night because Hugh Hefner died in 2017, but the secrets in his basement lived on. Hidden cameras had been recording guests since the late 1970s. Former girlfriends said the basement stored mountains of adult content that Hefner used to control people. One vault contained FBI files showing decades of investigation. By 2022, over 10 lawsuits emerged from victims who discovered they had been recorded. The basement wasn't just hiding parties. It was hiding crimes that would haunt Hollywood forever. Hugh Hefner was born on April 9, 1926, in Chicago, Illinois. His parents were strict Methodists who didn't believe in hugging, movies, or anything even slightly related to sex. That cold and rule-filled house shaped him in ways no one could have imagined. As a child, he would secretly draw pictures of half-dressed women. Even at that age, something inside him was already pushing against the walls they had built around him. He later said that the lack of warmth in his family made him crave emotional and physical freedom. It was like his whole life became a reaction to that early repression. He had a high IQ of 152, but his school grades were just average. He didn't shine in class, but he shined in his imagination. At Sear Elementary, he started writing comic books where he was the hero full of daring adventures. When he was 16, a girl named Betty broke his heart. That pain hit him so hard he reinvented himself completely. He started calling himself Hef, changed how he dressed, and began writing a comic about his own school life called School Days. This was in 1942, and it was one of the first times he turned personal hurt into something creative. At Steinmetz High School, he kept pushing forward. In 1943, he started the school newspaper called the Steinmetz Trumpet. He was the cartoonist and reporter, blending words with images, making people laugh while sharpening his voice. He also sang in the school band, joined the student council, and never stopped performing. That heartbreak from Betty never really left him. It just pushed him harder. He kept working on his comic series, placing himself into wild stories full of excitement. After he graduated in early 1944, his legacy lived on. Decades later, in 2010, he began donating $7,500 a year to the school's paper so they could print in color. He was 84, but he still remembered that time vividly. Even in 2016, when there was a censorship dispute, he stepped in again, renewing his support to protect student voices. In June 1944, Hefner joined the Army. He trained at Fort Hood in Texas, where he earned a sharpshooter badge with his M1 rifle, but he never went to the front lines. Thanks to his typing skills, he was assigned a desk job in Maryland. He called it a lucky break. Instead of fighting overseas, he was chasing women around Washington and drawing cartoons for military newsletters. He served until 1946 and said those quiet years helped keep his creative flame alive. He believed that if he had seen combat, Playboy might have never happened. After leaving the Army, he went to the University of Illinois in 1946. He studied psychology with minors in creative writing and art. He worked so hard that he finished everything in just 2.5 years. He became the editor of the campus humor magazine called Shaft and introduced a new section called Co-Ed of the Month. It shocked many people, but hinted at what he would later build. He briefly attended Northwestern for grad school in 1949, but dropped out after writing a paper criticizing America's sex laws. He wanted to shake things up, not follow rules. That same year, he also studied at the Chicago Art Institute during the summer, blending his love for visuals and words. In 1952, Hefner was working at Esquire magazine, making $60 a week. He asked for a small raise, just $5, and they said no, so he quit. It was a bold move, but he was fed up. He borrowed $600 by mortgaging his furniture and raised another $8,000 from 45 investors, including $1,000 from his mother, who didn't believe in the project, but loved him enough to help. He first wanted to name the magazine Stag Party, but had to change it due to legal threats. So, he came up with Playboy. The first issue was put together in his small Hyde Park kitchen. The very first Playboy magazine came out in December 1953. It didn't even have a date on the cover because Hefner wasn't sure there would be a second issue. He bought nude photos of Marilyn Monroe for just $500. They were actually taken in 1949, long before she became a star. Monroe never worked with Playboy or even met Hefner, but that image, her lying on red velvet, eyes closed and lips slightly parted, became iconic. The issue sold nearly 54,000 copies at 50 cents each. Alongside the photo, Hefner included articles on jazz, sports, and even a Sherlock Holmes story. It was his way of saying the magazine was for the mind as well as the eyes. Today, original copies can sell for more than $100,000. Hefner wrote the very first editorial himself. He said the magazine would be entertainment for men with fiction, fashion, music, and women. It didn't take long for major writers to get involved. Ray Bradbury published a story. In 1955, Hefner shocked people by printing Charles Beaumont's story about a world where heterosexuals were discriminated against, flipping real-world oppression upside down. The story caused outrage, but Hefner stood by it. That same year, he also hired Dick Gregory, a black comedian he had seen perform in Chicago. It was Gregory's first big break. The magazine was selling 100,000 copies a month by then, but Hefner's fight was just beginning. In 1955, the U.S. Postal Service tried to ban Playboy, calling it obscene. He fought back and won. That win allowed him to print in full color and expand quickly. Even big names like Vladimir Nabokov and John Lennon contributed later. In 1963, he was arrested over photos of Jane Mansfield, but the case ended with a hung jury. He also started a TV show called Playboy's Penthouse in 1959. It looked like a party at his apartment and featured stars like Sam. The show pushed racial boundaries by showing black and white guests socializing together on screen, during a time when many stations in the South refused to air it. In 1960, Hefner opened the first Playboy Club in Chicago. It was packed with visitors paying for a keyholder membership just to get in. The waitresses wore satin costumes with bunny ears and tails. Behind the scenes, strict rules made them keep to a certain weight and appearance or they would be punished. By 1961, the club had welcomed over 132,000 people in just 3 months. Eventually, there were 40 clubs around the world, including places like London and Jamaica. In 1962, Hefner began writing a long series of essays called The Playboy Philosophy. It ran until 1965 and totaled about 250,000 words. He talked about free speech, abortion rights, and sex laws. Some saw him as a brave thinker, but others, especially feminist groups, said he was just using big words to justify using women. Protests began. Former employees later revealed that women working for him had to follow strict, often demeaning rules. Hidden abuse was already beginning to surface. By 1964, Playboy went public and was worth $120 million. Hefner still controlled most of it. In December 1959, he had bought a huge 70-room mansion in Chicago for $370,000. It had secret tunnels, a pool with a waterfall entrance, and rooms full of mirrors and lights. He lived there after his divorce and held wild parties with hundreds of guests. FBI agents kept watch during obscenity investigations. Years later, women came forward saying they were drugged, forced into acts, and even filmed without consent. Some of these claims were included in documentaries as late as 2022. In 1968, Hefner started Playboy Productions to make movies. One of the first big ones was MCBTH in 1971, directed by Roman Polanski. It was a dark, violent film, and got attention partly because Polanski had just lost his wife, Sharon Tate. The company made over 20 films, including St. Jack in 1979. But behind the scenes, things were falling apart. Playboy's name was everywhere, but darker stories kept coming out. Hugh Hefner married Millie Williams in 1949 after they met at Northwestern University. He had saved himself for her, believing she was the one. But while he was away serving in the army, Millie confessed to having an affair. That moment shattered him. He later said it was the most painful thing that ever happened in his life. Out of guilt, Millie allowed him to sleep with other women, but it couldn't save their marriage. By 1959, they divorced after 10 years. They had 2 children, Christy, born in 1952, and David, born in 1955. After the divorce, Hugh changed. He threw himself into wild living at the Chicago Playboy Mansion, dating multiple women at once. He even claimed he had been with over 1,000 women. Their children first took the last name of Millie's new husband, Edwin Gunn, but later went back to Hefner. This was the beginning of the lifestyle that would make him famous. Lavish parties, young women, and a world of fantasy. In 1968, everything shifted again when he met Barbie Bent. She was only 18 and appeared on his TV show, Playboy, After Dark. Their relationship grew fast and she moved in. By 1971, she convinced him to buy a huge mansion in Holby Hills for just over $1 million. That same year, he transformed the estate into the new Playboy Mansion. It had a zoo, waterfalls, secret rooms, and a grotto where wild parties happened almost every night. Celebrities like Mick Jagger and Warren Beatty came often. Benton even helped design parts of the house. They stayed together until 1976, but his affairs led to the breakup. Still, she later said those were the best years of her life. Then, in 1985, Hefner had a serious stroke. He was 58. It left him partly paralyzed for a while and forced him to rethink his life. 4 years later, in 1989, he married again. This time it was to Kimberly Conrad, a 26-year-old playmate he met during her photo shoot in 1987. She became Playmate of the Year in 1989. They had 2 sons, Marston, born in 1990, and Cooper, born in 1991. He slowed down briefly for his family, but by 1998, they were living apart. He went back to his old ways, dating multiple women again. Kimberly finally filed for divorce in 2010 after living separately for over a decade. Hefner admitted that the marriage had been a kind of reaction to the fear brought on by his stroke. They stayed legally married for the children, and she even lived in the house next door. In 2012, he married one last time. On New Year's Eve, he tied the knot with Crystal Harris. She was 26 and he was 86. They had met at a Halloween party in 2008, and she soon moved into the mansion. But years later, in her 2024 memoir, she revealed what life with Hefner was really like. She said she felt trapped and controlled. He made her follow rules about what she wore, how she looked, even what kind of nail polish she used. She wasn't allowed to gain weight, had to bleach her hair quickly if her roots showed, and had a strict curfew. She said intimacy became robotic and almost non-existent after 2014. The mansion was full of mold, birds, and junk he refused to throw away. Though they had called off the wedding once in 2011, they got back together. But when he died, she inherited nothing. That marriage showed a darker side of Hefner, one that was about control, not love. In 1975, a tragedy rocked the Playboy world. Bobby Arstein, Hefner's secretary, died by suicide in a Chicago hotel. She was just 34. At the time, the government was investigating drug use in the Playboy empire. Bobby had been sentenced to 15 years for helping to transport cocaine. Hefner believed the charges were a way to pressure her into turning against him. He called it a witch hunt. The media exploded with rumors of drugs and wild parties at the Playboy mansions. Another woman, Adrienne Pollock, had died from an overdose in 1973. It was a dark time, and Hefner's image began to change. Then came an even darker story in 1980. Dorothy Stratton, who had just been named Playmate of the Year, was murdered by her jealous husband. She was only 20. People blamed Hefner for putting her in harm's way. After her death, he published nude photos of her without the family's permission. Her mother and sister sued. Former workers said she had been assaulted at the mansion. Her boyfriend, director Peter Bogdanovich, later wrote a book blaming Hefner and the Playboy culture for everything. The whole world saw the cracks in the fantasy. The 1980s brought more disturbing claims. Multiple women came forward saying Hefner had assaulted them at the mansion. Some were underage. Drugs were often involved. His former girlfriend Crystal later said he had thousands of compromising photos and she destroyed them after his death. One of his valets said Hefner once assaulted a girl while she slept. Twin sisters who lived at the mansion said he refused to use protection and left one of them pregnant. The mansion, once seen as glamorous, now seemed like a place of pain. A strange and secretive part of Hefner's world was connected to his personal doctor, Mark Sagener. In the 1970s and 1980s, Sagener ran hidden homes called shadow mansions. These were places where women were brought in, promised fame, and then used for parties and encounters. Sagener's daughter later said it was all very dark and predatory. Some people believed Hefner and the doctor were more than just friends. Others claimed those homes were used for even worse things, including illegal videos and abuse. It all came to light during drug investigations in the 1980s. Back in 1971, Hefner's purchase of the Playboy Mansion had started it all. He turned the 1927 Gothic-style house into a symbol of fantasy. There was a grotto with waterfalls and hot tubs, secret hallways, even a zoo. By the 1980s, it had a gym with tanning beds. But after decades of parties, the house fell into decay. In 2016, he sold it for $100 million to a neighbor who agreed to let him live there until he died in 2017. In November 1972, Playboy magazine hit its peak with over 7 million copies sold. In 1976, presidential candidate Jimmy Carter gave a shocking interview, admitting he had committed adultery in his heart. It almost ruined his campaign, but it helped sell more magazines. Playboy became known not just for its photos, but also for its interviews with famous people like Martin Luther King Jr. and John Lennon. Hefner also tried to expand beyond magazines. In 1971, he started Playboy Records. Barbie Benton recorded music under the label. One song, Show and Tell, became a hit in 1974. In 1981, he opened a casino in Atlantic City. It made millions, but by 1984, it was shut down after Hefner was denied a gaming license due to old bribery accusations. The casino's fall was part of the brand's growing troubles. By the 1990s, Playboy's print sales were sinking. But under his daughter, Christie's leadership, they moved online. In 1994, Playboy.com launched. In 1995, they started the Playboy Cyber Club with videos and chats. In 2011, they even released a full archive on iPad, dodging Apple's rules. Christie had seen the internet's potential early and helped keep the company alive during a changing time. In 1988, Christie officially became CEO. Hefner stepped back, focusing on creative work. In 2005, he starred in a reality show called The Girls Next Door. It showed life inside the mansion with his girlfriends Holly, Bridget, and Kendra. The show ran for 6 seasons and made Hefner a TV star again. Millions watched, but behind the scenes, many of the women later said it wasn't what it seemed. In March of 1985, Hugh Hefner was 59 when he had a small stroke that changed his life forever. He blamed the stress of it on a book that had come out about the murder of Playmate Dorothy Stratton. After the stroke, Hefner sold his famous private jet called Big Bunny. He had bought it in 1969 for $5.5 million. It wasn't just any jet. It had a disco area, a cinema, and sleeping space for 16 people. It was painted black with a spotlight showing the Playboy bunny logo, and it had been a symbol of his wild life. But once the stroke hit, he tried to live healthier. He stopped smoking and said he was slowing down. But the truth was different. Even as he aged into his 80s, he kept throwing wild parties. He started using Viagra and once said the drug had changed his life because it let him continue being intimate with multiple women. It was a strange mix, trying to be healthy while still living like nothing had changed. At the same time, Playboy's empire was falling apart. Their casinos in the US and the UK were closing down, and money was drying up fast. In June of 2016, people started whispering that Hefner was getting worse. Some said he was acting like someone with dementia. That same year, he sold the Playboy mansion for $100 million. The man who bought it was 32-year-old Darren Metropolis, whose father owned Hostess Brands. The mansion had been bought by Playboy back in 1971 for just $1.1 million. It was huge, over 22,000 square ft, and had a zoo license, a game room, and the famous grotto. But by 2016, it was falling apart and needed major repairs. The most shocking part of the deal was that Hefner got to keep living there for the rest of his life. Playboy paid $1 million a year to lease it back. People started to wonder if he was too weak to move out at all. Metropolis had already bought the house next door back in 2009 for $18 million, and he planned to combine the two homes into one giant property after Hefner died. This strange arrangement revealed the truth. Hefner's empire was crumbling, and the man who once ruled parties now rarely left his bedroom. On September 27, 2017, Hugh Hefner died at 91 years old.